Hey there, and welcome to this week's From the Vault episode from the Magdalen House podcast. We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization based in Dallas, Texas, and known affectionately by many as Maggies. Every first and third Wednesday, we bring you a new release. In our From the Vault episodes, we share past podcast releases from our 3 different podcast series, RecoverED, Recovered Interviews with Alcoholics, and Hope for the Family. Our podcasts aim to connect, inspire, and educate alcoholics, loved ones, and the community to the Magdalen House and the services we offer. We're so glad you're here. Thanks for listening.
Hello, podcast listeners. My name is Stephanie Crawford, and I am the host of this here podcast, Recover Out Loud. And it is the first Monday of the month when this is released, which means that it is our RecoverED series, our educational series. Super excited about today's episode, y'all. So what we will be doing is talking about 5 things that well-intended people need to stop saying to alcoholics. And I have my dear friend with me, Katie Youngman, and so today we're going to have tons of fun. A little bit of background, but this whole thing was started as a piece of our curriculum to take things that our clients may have heard or will hear when they leave here. Like I said, by well-intended people, by well-meaning people. This can be heard in the treatment world, in the therapy world, even from family members who really just want to see alcoholics get better. However, it's coming from a place of ignorance and misunderstanding. So what we do is we take that information and we look at what the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous says about that, because that is where our curriculum comes from. And so before we get started, I want to talk about 3 different types of drinkers. The big book talks about this as well. And if you want to look at that, it starts on page 20 and there is a solution. And it starts with moderate drinkers. Moderate drinkers have little trouble in giving up liquor entirely. If they have a good reason, they can take it or leave it alone. This is what we see whenever I was a bartender, the person who would come in after work for a happy hour, have 1, maybe 2 drinks, go home and, be a loving partner and parent to their children and not destroy their life in one night. And these are the people who can be at a wedding reception and have a drink. They can choose to get drunk if they want to. And so they're very, what we would consider normal drinkers. Then we have the hard drinker. And the hard drinker looks just like the real alcoholic if you put us next to each other. And this is where I think a lot of people get caught up with, because hard drinkers may need help to quit. They may need to go to treatment. They may need to go to detox. They may need to go somewhere to get separated for a little bit, but given a sufficient reason, whether it be maybe facing prison time, getting a DWI, someone threatening to leave the marriage, problems with kids, anything like that, like they can stop or moderate. And I like to talk about my stepdad when I talk about this, because one of the things that you will hear hard drinkers say, at least this is my experience, is I used to be an alcoholic. And my stepdad was a hard drinker for about 20 something years. And he got 4 DWIs and was facing prison time. And he had some epiphany, some experience, some jailhouse religion, as people call it. And now he hasn't touched drugs in like 20 years or something. No, not 20 years. Maybe. Oh my God, he's been married to my mom for that long. Except for he tried something one time, but didn't like the way it made him feel. So yeah, you're not the real deal, bud. But he can drink normally now. And so just the fact that somebody has 4 DWIs, for instance, doesn't necessarily mean that they're a real alcoholic. It could just mean that they make really dumb decisions when they're drunk and they're really bad at drinking and driving. And so what we like to do here is we like to look at the solution for the real alcoholic, which is what I am, which is what Katie is. And the real alcoholic, we have this physical allergy that once we start, we cannot stop. and there is no consequence sufficient enough for us to stop and stay stopped. Which is why it was so hard for me to see my stepdad, who could have a beer and be totally fine. And I held on to that for a really, really long time because I wanted that to be my story. And what I know today is that's not my story. Yeah. And to be honest, I'd rather be a real alcoholic than a hard drinker.
Me too. We have a beautiful perspective on life on the other side.
I know. We get this awesome solution.
And not that other people can't find that, but
yeah,
I consider myself lucky.
For sure. I probably wouldn't have found it had it not been
true.
I was going to die.
Yeah.
So, the big book talks about, that moral psychology doesn't work for the real alcoholic. Carl Jung said that there was really no hope for us except for these spiritual experiences that would happen here and there. And now we're so lucky that we have like the steps to that spiritual experience. And so it's a lot more common to see alcoholics recover than it was way back then. And so we are going to be talking about the real alcoholic. So while some of this stuff may work for the hard drinker, it does not work for the real alcoholic.
Right. And so on your point of these well-meaning people who are saying these things from a good place and trying to help us, I think a lot of times too, there may be some moderate drinkers and some hard drinkers in the rooms of these 12-step fellowships who are also saying these things to the real deal alcoholic. And while this messaging might be helpful to them, they might hear just put the plug in the jug and be able to do that. And they're successful at it and they are able to stop drinking or even moderate. Unfortunately for us chronic alcoholics, that's not the case.
I love that you said that, by the way. I completely forgot about that part, that a lot of our hard drinkers do end up in the rooms.
Right.
All right. So let's start with the first one.
Okay.
All right. So the first one that we hear often is think the drink through and remember the consequences. Yeah. And I like to tell this story, and then I'll let Katie talk. But I remember it was when I was about 22, 23 is when I first started coming into the rooms. And I was in a meeting, and I heard this guy stand up, and he was talking. It's so funny. I'm like, I don't know why he stood up. He was just sharing. But he stood up, at least in my memory. And he was talking about being at the bowling alley and seeing these people drink and having a good time. And then he thought that he wanted to drink, but then he remembered where that drink would take him, and then he didn't do it.
Right.
And I remember feeling so defeated and thinking, like, why doesn't that work for me? Like, why can't I do that? So, Katie, do you want to share what the big book says about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I feel like this is, well, I don't feel like it is in direct conflict with what we learn about the mental obsession. So on page 24, if you have your book, please flip to it. It says, in italics, it says, the fact is that most alcoholics, for reasons yet obscure, have lost the power of choice in drink. Our so-called willpower becomes practically non-existent. We are unable, at certain times, to bring into our consciousness with sufficient force the memory of the suffering and humiliation of even a week or a month ago. We are without defense against the first drink. So like what you were saying in that story that you just told is like my alcoholic brain would start thinking about playing the tape through and remembering the consequences, except for the way the tape goes in my head, it always turns out well.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's going to be different this time. We won't let it get that bad. I'll manage it.
Oh my gosh. I saw this meme real quick, and it said, play the tape through. And then the tape is all the best memories I've ever had using drugs and drinking.
Yeah. I can't bring into my consciousness. It tells me with sufficient force. While I might think of it, I might be able to think of the consequences and all the pain and the harm. And the book also calls it like the havoc that we create. Mm-hmm. I might be able to consider that, but it's not going to have enough force to stop me from drinking.
Absolutely.
So can I share a funny story? I'll try
Oh my God.
brief.
Yes.
Okay.
No, I was going to say, tell the story.
So the last time I was in treatment, my husband, he's also one of us. He wouldn't mind me saying that. We were kind of separated at the time, and he had been sober for a while. And I go to treatment, and, you know, I remember talking to him on the phone, and I'm just like crying. And I'm like, how do you do it? I just don't know. Like, how do you stay sober? And at this point, you know, he's pretty frustrated and fed up with my my BS. And so he's like, I just remember the pain. I remember all the pain, Katie, and, you know, like, I just don't do it anymore. And I'm like, wow, that's so profound. You know, I'm like, yes, I just have to think of all the bad stuff and remember the pain, you know? And so fast forward a couple of weeks into treatment, my husband goes MIA and quits answering my phone calls. And I get out and I'm still like, you know, thinking that I'm just going to remember the pain, you know? And so I move into sober living, and, you know, I barely had a job, and I decided it was a great idea to go get this tattooed on my arm, because like big and bold, ugly letters right on my forearm, you know, remember the pain, so that I would always see it and I would never, you know, drink or use again. And so I did that. And, you know, about a month later, I got in contact with my husband again. He popped back up, and, you know, he had relapsed. He was not sober. And he's like, did you get a new tattoo? And I'm like, yeah, you know, remember the pain. He's like, what is that? And I'm like, you said this to me. You told me that's how you stayed sober. And he's like, Katie, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. I would never say so. And I'm like, oh my God. So now I have this dumb thing tattooed on my arm. And now, so I always say, now I'm going to get, like, just kidding, read page 24 underneath it. But it just goes to show, like, all the crazy things we do and the ways that we try to control this thing. Luckily, I was able to stay sober. I got a sponsor, and I worked the steps, and I got some freedom around that obsession. But yeah.
No, and you know what? I do want to say, though, like, now I can remember the pain, right? Because I'm been restored to sanity, which means that mental obsession has been removed. Right. So I can remember how awful it was. Now, that's not what keeps me away from the first drink. The reason why I stay away from the first drink is because the mental obsession has been removed by a higher power.
Right.
And so, like, my sponsor told me one time, it's like, I can remember being thrown in jail. Mm-hmm. Like, I can remember that. But it's like, I don't remember that pain and the humiliation I felt while being thrown in jail.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, total. And also, like, it's the delusion that we fall victim to, you know, is that, like I had mentioned earlier, this time it'll be different, or I won't let it get that bad. Mm-hmm. Or, you know, one of my favorite ones was, you know, it's his fault. If I could just get away from him, or he needs to get his life together, and then maybe I can drink successfully. I'm only doing this because of him, or just whatever excuse, like, you know, add onto the list forever, because, you know, and then towards the end, it got to the point of the consequences were my, like, my reason, you know? Mm-hmm. Like, well, if you had been through what I'd been through, you would drink too. And I felt justified in that.
Oh, absolutely. Or we don't think at all, right?
Yeah, or it just never comes to mind. Yeah. It could be a great day, not a cloud on the horizon, you know? And all of a sudden, I'm just like, a beer would be really good right now. And then next thing I know, it's months later, and I'm...
Yeah. My last spree I went on, I went to work and somebody handed me a shot. I don't know if I should have been working there with 5 minutes sober, but sounded like a good idea at the time.
That's another conversation.
Yeah, and somebody handed me a shot, and I took it. And it was like I was living at a homeless shelter for addicts and alcoholics. I had gotten there with no shoes and just the clothes I was wearing. And the clothes I was wearing to work that day were clothes that I got from the clothes closet there.
Yeah.
I had on my wristband from Green Oaks when I got there. I hadn't talked to my daughter, and it was like none of that came into play.
Right.
Like nothing. Like, you're not going to see your daughter. You're going to lose your place to live. Like nothing. I just took it. Mm-hmm. And then before you know it, it's the end of the night and I'm freaking wasted.
Yeah.
So yes, play the tape through. While that may work for some, and it may work sometimes, if you're the real alcoholic, there will be a time, if you're not connected to a power greater than yourself, that does not work.
Right.
All right, next one. Do you want to read the next one?
Sure. Next one says, just don't drink no matter what.
My favorite.
Okay, first of all, if I could have done this, I would have. Okay.
Right? Okay, so.
Well, I think this is harmful to people like us because it presents some sort of illusion that we still have control or willpower over this thing, and which is in direct conflict, you know, with our step one truth of powerlessness.
Absolutely. When our step one truth is that I will drink no matter what.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, that's what it is, you know? And I do want to say, I don't want somebody to hear this and think that like if something bad happens, somebody's going to drink, because that is absolutely not what we're saying at all. Like I've gone through some stuff in sobriety.
Yeah.
I've gone through breakups. I've gone through loss and the death of my son's father. I mean, everything that would have been a great excuse to drink before, I've stayed sober through.
Yeah.
And it's not because I all of a sudden have this amazing willpower now that I can just stay sober no matter what. Again, it goes back to that mental obsession has been removed, right? So like I don't have to drink no matter what. But that's only because I'm connected to a power greater than myself.
Right.
Me on my own resources, I'll do the exact opposite. I'll drink if it's a good day. I'll drink if it's a bad day. I'll drink if it's, you know, if I got the job, I'll drink if I lose the job. I'll drink if I'm happy. I'll drink when I'm sad. You know, like I'll drink on a Friday. I'll drink on a Saturday. I'll drink if it's raining. I'll drink if it's sunny. Like every single reason, like I'll find a reason. Every reason sounds like a good reason to drink if I'm in active alcoholism.
Right.
And under the do you want to say what the big book says about this?
Sure. So the first one, we have a couple. Let's go to page 42 in the chapter more about alcoholism. It tells us that I saw that willpower and self-knowledge would not help in those strange mental blank spots. And I love that strange mental blank spot, because I get that, you know what I mean? And I think if you're talking to someone who has been through the work and they're the real deal, they understand, because it's like, it's a blank spot because it's, you know, nothing comes to mind to deter me. And even if it did, it wouldn't have enough power, like we just talked about in the first one.
Yeah.
The thing that comes to mind when you were talking just a second ago is like that no matter what thing. I mean, that's a pretty vague like statement. And if I can't, and I just keep thinking of this one situation where I had this really important meeting at my son's school. So my son has autism, and so we meet regularly with his counselors and his diagnosticians and like the principal and all of that to go over his accommodations. And it's a pretty big deal. And like, I couldn't even stay sober to make it to that meeting, you know? And so it's like, no matter what, I mean, that's one of the most important things in my life, and making sure that he's taking, and I couldn't even do it for that. And so, like I said in the beginning, if I could have done this, I wouldn't be sitting here right now. You wouldn't even be talking to me. If I could just not drink, I would have.
Right.
It's like, have you ever, like, I always talk when I do my meeting with the clients, I'm like, who in here's family members or loved ones have said, why don't you just stop?
Just stop
drinking. You're ruining your life. And it's like, if I could do that, I would. You know, don't you think that I've thought of that?
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, the big book also talks about, it just repeatedly says that willpower is not enough. And we'll get more into that too later, because a lot of these saying and phrases, it all just goes back to the mental obsession. Right? Like, all of this is in direct conflict to us losing the power of choice. And the power of choice, which I just heard this recently, people have said that the power of choice, we lose that once we put the drink in our body. And I'm like, no.
Yeah.
We lose the power of choice before I put the drink in my body. Right? And so, like, there's also some misunderstanding around that.
Right.
If I could just stay away from the drink, I wouldn't need a program.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So next one.
Oh, this is a good one.
Oh, yeah. This is one of our favorites. All right. Do it for your kids.
Yeah. You should just want to get sober for your kids. It's kind of what I was talking about a second ago.
Right. I love how you put here ignorant and uneducated statement. Right? Like, what an awful thing
to say to someone,
to say to a mother or a father.
Right. And I think it comes from a place of, again, of ignorance and not understanding that I am not a bad person. I'm not a bad mother. I love my children more than anything on this earth. And I'm sure all of you who have kids can agree with that I would literally jump in front of a moving bus for them. I could not stop drinking for my kids. It wasn't about loving my children. This disease is so cunning and powerful that it it's bigger than like your even strongest desire for the most basic human needs, like food and water and sleep. I would rather drink and get wasted when I'm in my addiction. You know, I would rather drink and get wasted than eat or drink water or even sleep. I didn't care. There was a time where for many years where I never slept. I just passed out, you know, like, and so when you try to say that, like, do it for your kids, like your kids need you, they love you. Like, yes,
I know that.
Thank you.
Yeah. No. And when this book was written too, right, it talked about this obsession. The word obsession meant possessed. And so like, that's like literally what I think of when, you know, I first started coming into the rooms at age 22, 23. I didn't get sober until I was 27. When I was 22, I still had my child, and I would be looking at these parents who were either not speaking to their kids or had CPS cases, and I would be so judgmental and think like, I will never let it get that bad. And I had no idea that this thing was a progressive illness, and then I was chronic, and that I couldn't prevent it from getting that bad, you know? And so by the time I did get sober, I had not seen my daughter in I don't even know how long. Yeah. And like hadn't spoken to her. And, you know, there would be times where she would, I mean, people have probably heard me say this 1,000 times, but it cuts deep where she would have to her dad would track me down because they could never get a hold of me. And she would say, Mommy, every single night I wish upon a shooting star that whenever I wake up, you'll be here and you're never here. Like, that's like heartbreaking. Yeah. Right. And, you know, by the end of it, I would be so angry with God because I'd be like, how can you create this perfect little girl and give her me as a mother when I can't even stay sober? Yeah. You know, it's the most painful thing. I was talking to a friend of mine recently, and she's going through this, you know, she's like, the only thing I need to do to see my kids is to not drink. I don't have to work. I don't even have a place to live. The only thing I need to do to see my kids is not drink. And I can't do that.
And I can't even do that. Yeah.
She said, it feels like my heart is on fire.
Oh God. I get that.
It's so painful to see.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I used to judge the crap out of people. Like, especially I would see women who were pregnant and they'd be drinking or using, and I'd be like, oh my God, how could you ever do that? Until it was me, you know, like there was a point later on and towards the end of my alcoholism that I was pregnant and I could not stop. So I want to read this quote in the big book real quick. It says on page 60
that probably no human power could have relieved our alcoholism.
Yes. Okay. So if human power alone was enough, not only would I have done it for my older kids, I would have done it for that tiny little baby growing inside of me. And you want to talk about drinking against your will? I remember being so wasted and hating myself and feeling this tiny baby kick inside of me and wanting to freaking scream. It was the most awful thing because I'm not choosing. I know I'm an intelligent person. I know that that's not probably the smartest thing to do when you're pregnant, and I couldn't not do it. Yeah. And it felt like I was fighting a battle I couldn't win.
And it's, you know, it's crazy to me because I know you so well and I know your heart. And you're like one of the kindest people that I know. And you love your children so much. And we were literally just having this conversation, right? I'm like, you're such a good mom. And I can see right in front, like, I know that I love my children more than anything else in this world. And I can see how much Katie loves her children. But if we were in active addiction or under the mental obsession, it would look like to the outside world
that I don't care, that I'm a horrible piece of crap human being.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And so saying that, you know, like, do it for your kids, you know, or why can't you do it for your kids? Are they not enough? Or all that kind of stuff, right? Feeds that stigma that we're bad people. You know, like, there's already this shame around being an alcoholic mother. And so saying that, like, feeds that shame and it feeds that stigma, and it just goes back into that, like, if you really wanted to, which we'll get into that one, to stop, you could. Yeah. You know?
Yeah. Well, I think, I mean, without a spiritual solution and freedom from that obsession, I can't, you know? And so I think that's kind of our purpose of doing this whole thing, is to educate people and hopefully someone who doesn't know will listen to this and be like, oh, okay, now I get it.
Yeah.
You know?
And I don't want to sit here and say like we should be let off the hook for the things that we do to our children or put our children through. Absolutely not. Right. Like I had to really look at who I was as a mother and
do a lot of work in the steps.
Yeah. And like really like face the truth about myself that like without a higher power, without a solution, it doesn't matter how much I love my daughter, I'm not a good mother. Right? Like if somebody were to take care of my child the way I was taking care of my child, I'd want to like do things that are not appropriate to say on this podcast, you know?
Right. Yeah.
So we're not saying that we should be let off the hook for those things, but we are going to say that it's not that you're a bad mother or that you don't love your children. You're sick and you can actually make it right in your recovery.
That's right.
Yeah. Anything else on that?
No, I think that was good. All
right. So next one.
Don't sponsor anybody until you have a year sober. You have to have a year first, Stephanie.
Love this one for many reasons. One of the reasons is because like if you've been through the steps and you've had a spiritual awakening, like you understand like it's kind of like a byproduct or like a symptom is like you're on fire and you want to share the solution with everyone.
You're screaming it from the rooftop.
And if you don't have that, maybe you missed something, you know, but like so imagine feeling that and then somebody saying like, okay, hold on to that, like, you know, wait a year.
Yeah. Just chill and be still for a little bit, okay? I'm going to need you to sit down.
Yeah.
And you're like, what? Because it literally that is the essential of our 12th step, you know? And it literally tells us that like we have to go out and carry this message to those who are still suffering. Mm-hmm. And how can I do in order to stay free?
Yeah.
You know, and to stay sober, because to drink is to die. And so in order to keep what I have to go out and give it away. Nowhere in the book does it tell us to chill and be still and, you know, wait a year.
No. In fact, it tells us the exact opposite multiple times. Like, you know, helping others is the foundation stone of our recovery. You know, what other things does it have? Our very lives of ex-problem drinkers depends on the constant thought of others and how we may meet their needs. You know, whenever Ebby carried the message to Bill, he had like 2-3 months sober, right? Yeah. Whenever Bill found Dr. Bob, he had like 6 months sober.
Right.
And if he would have waited a year, literally none of us would be here today.
Right.
It's insane.
Yeah. The other thing I was going to say is like people, this is why I ask when clients come in, you know, and they've been there for a couple of days and I'm doing my 10 a.m. meeting, I like to ask them if, you know, if they worked all the 12 steps previously. And a lot of them
I love that question.
A lot of them will say,
it's a trick question.
Yeah, I worked the 12 steps. And then my follow-up is, well, were you sponsoring? Well, no. You know, and I'm like, well, then you didn't work the 12 steps. Like, how are you going to work step 12 without sponsoring anybody? That's like literally what it is. We carry this message, you know, having had a spiritual awakening as the result of the steps.
Yeah. Now, I have a sponsee that I'm working with, and I was telling her because she was, you know, talking to me about one of her sponsees. And I was like, make sure she knows that she is not working the program, because if she relapses, you don't want her to say that she tried this and it doesn't work.
Right.
And she's like, I wish somebody would have told me that, because I worked up till step 7, didn't feel anything. And so I stopped. And then I told everyone that I worked a program and it didn't work.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But no, it's one of my favorite questions to ask the clients too.
Yeah. Maybe I got that from you.
Really? Maybe. I don't know. I got it from Isaac.
Oh.
Because he would ask that when we would go to Turtle Creek.
Yeah.
And he'd be like, did you make all your amends?
Right.
Did you leave anything off your 4-step? Were you living in 10 and 11? Were you sponsoring?
Yeah.
Were you carrying the message? And
yeah.
like, if you have to say no to any of those, then
yeah.
he's like, then you did not work all 12 steps.
Yeah. And I think another point I wanted to make too about this was that, and I think I kind of touched on it, but like our lives depend on this. Mm-hmm. And so how horrible is it for me to tell somebody that like your life depends on this, but now you have to hold on to that for a year or however long. You know, people can work the steps in a week, 2 weeks, and now you have to wait 12 more months. I'm sorry. Before, like I think it's deadly. I think it's deadly. Also, another thing is, you know, girls, I've heard people say who are looking for sponsors, they'll say something like, well, I just want to make sure I have somebody who's experienced. And I'm like, girl, listen, the person who has 6 months or 4 months sober, who has worked the 12 steps and is on fire, has so much more to relate to you, or is so much more closer to you than the woman who has 25 years. You know what I mean? Like, they're so much more in tune with like their experience because they just came out of it.
They just came out of it. Yeah.
So I could talk about that one forever.
I mean, the woman who took me through the steps, I think maybe she had about a month, 2 or 3 sober.
Right.
That's it.
Yeah.
And I'm still sober today.
Look at you.
I know. Because it's, like it doesn't, like time is nothing, especially if you don't have quality sobriety.
Yeah.
I don't want somebody sponsoring me who's miserable just because they have some,
a couple of years under their belt or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so on that note too, like if you have not worked the 12 steps and you're sponsoring, you're not working step 12 because step 12 says having had a spiritual awakening as the result of the steps, right? So if you haven't worked all 12 steps, what message are you carrying?
Right.
Maybe put the plug in the jug. I do want to tell this story though too about one of our dear Next Step participants who did not go through first step. She had about 5 months sober when she found the Magdalen House through the podcast and came into Next Step. And she was telling me, and then this is whenever she really learned about the powerlessness and the mental obsession. And she did not understand why she kept drinking. And her sponsor would say, you have to call me before you drink. You have to call me before you drink. And she would be crying, being like, I don't understand. Why isn't this working for me? What did you do? Mm-hmm. And her sponsor said, I put the plug in the jug and I gave it to God. I didn't know that people actually said those types of things.
I have no words.
I understand. Like, I'm blessed in the fact that all I have come up with this time go around, all the multiple times before that I've tried to get sober, I can look back and realize that like I wasn't actually serious, but I thought I was. But I've only really known big book recovery. So I can get pretty judgmental about people who are judgmental of like quote unquote middle of the road. Mm-hmm. But it's because I don't have the experience of somebody telling me put the plug in the jug and give it to God and just stop drinking and then it not working. Yeah. I can't imagine how defeating that must feel for people.
I mean, well, I do. I mean, I know that like I tried for a long time in and out of different 12-step fellowships and all of that. And this is the stuff I heard for a long time. And I remember clearly thinking, well, I must be beyond help because that stuff's not working for me and it's working for these people. It looks to be working for these people. So I must be like beyond help. And that's kind of the point where I had like resigned myself to dying drunk,
this way,
dying this way. And so it is very defeating. And I didn't know that there was an actual like solution for people like me. And I always like to say, like, I don't know if someone had presented that to me before because I've been through a lot of treatment centers. I'm sure somebody read out of this book. You know
yeah,
I mean?
Absolutely.
Or if I don't know if I just couldn't hear it. That's probably the one that's more likely is I wasn't in a place where I had my butt kicked enough by my own actions, my own step one experience to be desperate enough to hear it.
Mm-hmm. And I do think that there's so much of this that is like divine orchestration, divine intervention, right? Like where it's like that moment of clarity lines up perfectly with that moment of willingness and like where God opens our ears and our mind and our heart just a little bit for us to hear something, to take some action, And so I never want to come across as like I'm putting, so much restrictions on how to get sober because God's so much bigger than any kind of restrictions that we put on him. Or like any kind of rigidity that we put on him. Yeah. But I guess the reason why I say all that is because
if you're like us, maybe you can try this too.
Yes.
And I'm certain it'll work.
For sure.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to finish your sentence.
No, I'm so glad that you did. Because clearly I needed some help there finishing it. And so anyways, if you have been hearing those things and you're wondering why it's not working for you, there's a ton of other people that it didn't work for them either. And we found this beautiful way out and this beautiful solution in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. So our final one.
You have to really want it.
You have to really want it.
Have you ever heard someone talking about someone else who has maybe just relapsed and they say, oh, well, she didn't want it bad enough.
Ugh,
He must have not wanted it bad enough, obviously. Nothing drives me crazier.
Yeah, no, for real. And we're not saying that like you can just like not want it. Like you obviously have to want to be sober. Otherwise you're not going to put in, the spiritual program of action and the work that's needed for a spiritual experience. But just wanting it on by itself is not enough. I don't know about you, Katie, but I wanted to be sober
So bad.
way before I got sober.
Yeah.
It also just goes back to that whole like willpower thing, right?
Yeah.
Like if you really wanted it, you would do it.
Right. You must not just want it
Yeah.
bad enough.
I must really just,
You're not trying hard enough.
Yeah. I must really like to be homeless and away from my daughter and hating myself and,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, I have to say this because I do get a little fired up about it and I'll try not to, but I have some people in my life or had some people in my life and I know that you know what I'm talking about who I love very much. And I know that they wanted to be sober. I know that with all of my heart. My father tried for many, many years of his life, and I know that he loved us and he loved his family and he wanted to be free of this thing. And unfortunately, he drank himself to death in 2016, and it wasn't because he didn't want to be sober. My brother died of a drug overdose in 2010, and I truly believe that he wanted freedom and he wanted to be sober. And so I hate when people say that so much because it's not about how much you want it, it's about following it up with some action, whether that be with the 12 steps or whatever it is that gets you connected and free. Like, please do that, but there has to be something that is done after the just wanting it. And can I throw this out there that when I got sober this time, when I went to treatment, I didn't want to be sober. So there's that. Okay, I did not. I went to treatment because I got kicked out of the place I was living. And I was like, you know what? I'll go get a bed and some food and some good detox meds. And then I'll figure it out from there. And something happened. God is big enough. Yeah, God is big enough. And something changed along those lines. So it takes whatever it takes. But there's more to just wanting it or not wanting it.
Yeah. No, and I love that too. I had a friend of mine who knew me in my addiction, and he was saying, and he always was like rooting for me, but he's like, I think people can get sober. You just got to really like want it, you just got to really, really, really want it. And I'm like, oh, God bless you. Because I like, know, like he's like trying to be like supportive and stuff, but again, it's like one of those things that people don't understand that it's actually harmful. And just kind of to go based on like what you were talking about, like my son's father, Isaac, I know that he loved me and his son and my daughter. And I know that like if he could have chosen, like
he would have chosen you.
Yeah.
You guys, yeah.
Obviously.
Yeah.
Like I know that in the depths of my soul, right? And so when people say this, I'm kind of like, how dare you?
Yeah.
Because you have no idea. And then just also like knowing I knew him so well and I knew his heart so well that I can only imagine like the pain that he must have been feeling. Doing that. And so to say that they must not really want it is a very hurtful thing to say.
And I think it also just goes towards perpetuating that stigma again, like within ourselves. I know when someone said to me, like, you just don't want it bad enough, I thought, well, dang,
maybe I don't.
And how could I not want to be there for my kids? Like, oh my God, I am a POS. Like I really am a horrible human being. And so, again, that's the kind of stuff that keeps us from seeking help. You want to read in the big book what it says about this?
Sure.
Okay, on page 24.
Okay. At a certain point in the drinking of every alcoholic, he passes into a state where, The most powerful desire to stop drinking is of absolutely no avail.
Yeah.
Literally says it doesn't matter how much you want it.
The most powerful desire is of absolutely no avail.
And then on page 35, it says, this is a baffling feature of alcoholism, the inability to leave it alone no matter how great the necessity or wish.
Baffling. It's absolutely bad. We don't understand it. We don't know why. But it's a fact.
No matter the necessity or wish. Meaning it doesn't matter how much I need to be sober or how much I want to be sober. I am beyond human aid.
Right. Because what happens is I have a powerful desire, or I find this necessity or this wish to be sober, and then I get kicked in the butt by this spiritual malady and the mental obsession. And unfortunately, I don't have a choice. And so when that mental obsession kicks in, I fall victim to it every time, because without a solution, I'm what's the word I'm looking for? But I'm laying there like a sitting duck, basically, without a solution. And it, and so yeah, I love those quotes.
So that wraps up the 5 things that we need to stop saying to alcoholics. Now, part one. And I know Katie and I, we had a lot of laughs. We have a lot of fun together as we were doing this. But this is actually really serious and heavy stuff, guys. We know that this comes from a place of love and encouragement when people say it. And we're not trying to be, critical, I guess is the word, of others. We're trying to educate and end the stigma. That's right? I mean, that's really, because all of this stuff feeds into the stigma. And we want to shatter the stigma.
Exactly.
And also on the other hand too, we're not letting alcoholics off the hook either. Yeah. We've been through the steps, and the steps require you to take accountability for yourself and look at yourself and, look at the actions that you do and
make right the harms that you've caused.
Absolutely. And it takes work. Page 25, right? Says none of us like the self-searching, the leveling of our pride, which this process requires for its successful consummation. And so, it does take work. Yeah. Like we said, like if you don't want to be sober, you're not going to do the work. But wanting to be sober on your own is never enough. Yeah. So if you are hearing this and you relate to what we're saying and you need help, the Magdalen House is here to help you recover in a place of dignity, and we are at absolutely no cost. We're free, and we don't lower our quality of care or our programming to be able to do that. We're privately funded, and we have amazing people who support our mission in this organization, and we want to help every alcoholic woman that we can. That's right. So, Katie, do you have anything else that you want to add?
I don't think so. Thanks for asking me to do this with you. I had a lot of fun.
I did too. I love you so much. So, all right, y'all. Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. Let us know what you think. Share with a friend. Share with anybody that you think it might help. And I will catch you on the next episode. Bye.
We hope you've enjoyed this From the Vault re-release of the Magdalen House podcast. Tune in every first and third Wednesday for a new release from one of our 3 podcast series. To learn more about the Magdalen House and the services we offer, visit magdalenhouse.org or follow us on your favorite social media channels